Request all to switch off their mobiles or put them on silent mode, because we're going live, and apart from that it'll disturb the speakers. Fellow members of IIC and members of the Delhi Psychiatric Society, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the discussion on public mental health, from stigma to positive acceptance. Which is tomorrow, the 10th of October. I am Suhas, Borker, Mediaperson and Trustee of IIC, who shall moderate the discussion. We have a panel of distinguished speakers here today, 2 lead speakers and 4 panelists. Ashis Nandy, well-known author, sociologist and clinical psychologist, is one of the 2 lead speakers. The other lead speaker is Nimesh G. Desai, independent consultant, mental health, and former Director, Institute of Human Behaviour and Allied Sciences. P.K. Tripathi, the former Chief Secretary of Delhi, will be joining us shortly. Lavlin, Thadani, writer and filmmaker. Rita, Panicker, child rights activist and director, Butterflies India. Vishal, Chhabra, consultant psychiatrist and president of the Delhi Psychiatric Society. Now, for some housekeeping, each speaker gets 10 minutes. We have 6 speakers plus the moderator, which takes us past 7:40 p.m. This is followed by a Q&A, and we'll try to close, as we normally do all IIC programs, by 8 p.m. We might just slip up, I think, because there'll be some interesting questions. So the panelists are requested to strictly keep to the time allotted, that is 10 minutes. The program is being webcast live on IIC YouTube channel, from where it can be sourced anytime later at your convenience. Now, Nimesh and I worked on this topic, mental health from stigma to positive acceptance. It was to and fro, but finally, and he was going to Europe, and so there was a lot of time pressure on us to work it out, and IIC wanted the details. So somehow we arrived at this, I think we all agree that this is a very critical point, from stigma to positive acceptance. You have a lot of false beliefs about mental illness, and which itself causes significant problems. So stigma is when someone views you in a negative way because you have a distinguishing characteristic or personal trait that ought to be or actually is a disadvantage, a negative stereotype. Unfortunately, negative attitudes and beliefs towards people who have a mental health condition are common. Stigma leads to discrimination. Discrimination may be obvious and direct, such as someone making a negative remark about your mental illness or your treatment, or it may be unintentional or subtle, such as someone avoiding you because a person assumes you would be unstable, you could be violent, you could be dangerous due to your mental illness. Now, I'm not going to go into that. We have a lot of politicos these days hanging around who are mentally ill, but somehow we have to tolerate them. Stigma can, as I mentioned, lead to discrimination, but some of the harmful effects of stigma can include reluctance to seek help or treatment, lack of understanding by family, friends, co-workers, and even if you talk about politico, they're party people also, co-workers or others, fewer opportunities for work, school, or social activities, or trouble finding housing, bullying, physical violence or harassment, health insurance that doesn't adequately cover your mental illness. I don't know whether health is covered. Mental health is.
I'll refer to that.
Yeah, you'll refer to that. But is it covered?
Yes.
Yeah, it is. Okay. And then the beliefs that you will never succeed or at certain challenges, or that you can't improve your situation. So there are some ways they say that you can deal with the stigma, get treatment. Don't let stigma create self-doubt and shame. Don't isolate yourself. Don't equate yourself with your illness, you know. So instead of saying I am a bipolar, you say I have bipolar disorder. Instead of calling yourself a schizophrenic, you say I have schizophrenia. Okay. Now I have there's a little interesting aside which I just want to mention. No, that's okay, sir. Thank you. You see, there's this article I wrote which Ashis has vouched for, and this was I used these psychological terms to describe our economy. You know, so this was way back some years back, and I was writing an article on the course change, the only way forward, and I recognized that our economy was suffering from schizophrenia, you know, and this I said had two elements. The first is a split on the role of the state in the economic development of the country, which is manifest in the general withdrawal of the state and encouragement of privatization of profits and nationalization of losses. The second is the split on the role of the real economy and the financial economy, which is evident in making the former subservient to the latter. The second type of disorder I identified, ladies and gentlemen, as the obsessive compulsive disorder, the OCD. This also has two elements. The first is the fixation with the rate of growth, ignoring the Human Development Index, HDI. The second is the obsession with the Sensex, making it the barometer of India's economic health, though all are aware that FIIs have been manipulating its rise and fall, and that their vanishing trick had led to the stock exchange crash as in the past. So now, you know, the other thing which I just quickly wanted to flag, and then my time is up, is that I hope I'm not eating into Nimesh's what he wants to say.
Your 10 minutes.
No, my 10 minutes are not over yet. Okay. So, no, what I said was what you, the content I am worried about.
Yes.
Okay. The stigma usually appears in three forms, it is said. Here's how it can influence people consciously and unconsciously. Public discrimination and devaluation of others. Stigma in the public sphere can refer to the stereotypes of people with behavioral health conditions. The second is systemic, reduced access to care and resources due to policies. The third is self, internalization of negative stereotypes. Okay, the last point which I have is words to watch. You know, we commonly use terms, the mentally ill, people with mental illness, people with lived experience of mental illness. Now the this Dhananjay Chandrachud had done something on this at a different level, of course, in the Supreme Court, but somehow it's not reached mental health. The less stigmatized choices of use of first language, which emphasize the person's humanity rather than the issues of diagnosis. The preferred terms emphasizes that the person has a problem rather than is the problem. And then even the word habit undermines the seriousness of the disease and inaccurately implies that a person with a substance use disorder is choosing to use or can choose to stop. So like that, I mean, we have to be very careful of the words to watch. Now I would, request Ashis to take the floor, sir. Yeah, please.
In a while speaking to a collection of psychiatrists, and such a large presence there is today, I do not have to introduce you to your own concerns. I will like to give you the context in which psychiatry today is functioning as a disciplinary agent, in the sense that it is living within a social, political and cultural environment about which the psychiatrist may be or may not be that aware, because psychiatry is like any other division or subdivision of medicine, is an individual act. You are treating a patient always as an individual, and no two patients are exactly alike. India today is living in a very different kind of world. It is not the India in which I grew up. I notice a number of trends which I would like to draw your attention, and I hope some of you will perhaps care to have a look at it. First of all, there is a certain numbness. I am not using any technical word. Certain numbness about the area of, in the area of not only psychiatry, but virtually every discipline concerned with the society and culture of this country at the moment. To give you just a few references, I have been working for the last 15 years on comparative genocides globally, and also specifically the partition violence. Now, the study of comparative genocide tells me that I till today have not met very many killers who have lived healthy lives. In our study of killers, and this was studied done 50 years after the event. So you get, most of them have died. Some of them are so old that dementia has set in. Some of them are, in fact, virtually, once we start interviewing them, you find them incoherent or difficult to. This happens because many of our range of interviewees was between something like 70 to 105 or 6. So even some of the killers we interviewed. Now, my experience is this, that of all the killers we have interviewed, only one killer appeared to be in normal mental health. Only one. And that was a Sikh member who had killed, and his argument was this, that I didn't want to kill anybody. They attacked us. These Jattas in Punjab who led the violence, they attacked our village, and we, whatever, to the best of our ability, we resisted them. And he talked more like a retired soldier, and therefore he had a certain equanimity today, and seemed to me a a very likable and interesting person. But that is the only case I have met of a killer who has lived happily after killing. All the other killers we have been interviewed had very pronounced difficulties. Nobody could certify them as normal, because killing is not easy. Usually in riots and genocides, you mobilize a section of the community. These are not soldiers. These are not professional killers. You mobilize a community against another community. They are not accustomed to killing. And once you have killed, they are haunted by that. There was this movie, many of you might have seen it, or at least some of you might have seen it, on the genocide in Indonesia in 1960s, instigated by the CIA, because the communism, they are mostly leftists. Now, the one who made a film on that, one Oppenheimer, a Dutch filmmaker, very well known, he actually cast the killers in that genocide as actual actors who will act their own role, what they have done. Because all of them were convinced that they were doing it for the sake of their country, for resisting people who were traitors to the country, and so on and so forth. The usual arguments which the politicians always give. But even while seeing the movie and listening to the conversations and their discussions, I could see that none of the killers, apparently healthy, claiming to be healthy, was mentally healthy. And they, after a point, they began to complain about their inability to sleep. Or somebody would complain about what the dreams he sees. Somebody will say that now some of these persons I have killed come to in my dream. I cannot shake them away. None came out as normal. Legally, you could do nothing because the government has given them immunity. But the fact remains that same kind of thing I have seen in many other cases. One psychiatrist who was also a psychoanalyst, a friend of mine who practiced in Bombay, told me about once when he was taking a walk in the evening at Chhabra, he found, this was soon after a riot in Bombay, standard Hindu-Muslim riot. So they were discussing what they have done. They had looted an electronic shop which had a Muslim owner and killed him. And they were talking of him as the kind of Ravan. Ek Ravan ko maar diya. So he was interested and he said, I find your conversation very interesting. Would you allow me to talk with you? So they said, yes, come and listen to us. So they explained how they killed him, a huge man, and they were very proud of it, and how they looted the shop, and how their sister and their one cousin cooked the food for that day's dinner. So they celebrated it at home with the women at the home cooking for them if a grand dinner that they have succeeded in ransacking a electronic shop. So while this talking, when they were discussing, my friend said them that all right, you have all fine, but if you ever need me, because दिमाग का डॉक्टर हूँ, तो आपका कुछ ज़रूरत पड़े तो मेरा दफ्तर में आ जाइए. आया, he gave his card. And nothing happened for 3-4 months. After 5 or 6 months, once he was about to wind up his office in the evening, he comes out of the chamber and finds in the waiting room one person who was there, the lead person who had killed the Ravan. So, कुछ आपका प्रॉब्लम है कि क्या है? उन्हें आपसे बात करनी है. So he said, all right, we'll have a chat, but you have to come again. And then he said, give us a kind of problem was this, that he cannot sleep because whenever he is about to sleep, he finds that Ravan, whom he has killed, comes in and infiltrates him through the toes of his feet. He gets into them within him. And he cannot then sleep at all. And he cannot forget him. You know, he takes him over, more or less. And he said he went into a clinical thing with him and all. And he found that this is a real problem with him because he has also lost his appetite. He doesn't trust anybody anymore. He is always afraid that somebody will kill him, and or that ghost which enters his body will be doing some harm to him, and so on and so forth. So, I mean, you are psychiatrists, you know this kind of situation might have faced also some of them. So, I am trying to tell you that even without justice, even without a trial, there is enough problems associated with killing. Human beings do not kill that easily, you know, and that because they have to go back to the normal life after that. That return to normality is affected, and this is the thing of that is one part of the story. The second part of the story I want to draw your attention is this, that there is a certain numbing of sensitivities as far as certain kinds of mental health issues which we see all around us. Within 15 years, in the 1980s and 1990s, within 15 years, 3.5 lakh peasants committed suicide in India. Nobody remembers them. Nobody. There is not even a seminar on the subject has come out. And absolutely, it's blank. And these people have committed suicide within a short period of something like 12 to 15 years, and not in the poorest sections of the country, but in some of the most well-functioning states of India. Maharashtra, Gujarat, Karnataka, Andhra, these are prosperous states where peasants were accustomed to a certain kind of self-confidence they had. But somehow or other, they felt like committing suicide, and they did. And there was not even a proper study of it for us to get an insight into how this is done. Okay. This is one kind of numbing. I have another kind of numbing. I can give you an example. In 1990s, the Srinagar Medical College had only one bed. A psychiatry don't need usually bed, but they had, technically speaking, one bed for one psychiatric patient, because that was a rare occasion in Jammu and Kashmir. And Srinagar University Hospital was the only place where there was this special privilege of one bed. So the person who gave me that information said that we now need different kind of thing. We have to. There's a problem. And I said, what is your estimate of how many patients you want to hope to see? How many beds you want? Beds is a word the doctors probably use loosely. In psychiatry, bed doesn't come into much play. So he said, our minimum need is now 1,500 beds. Where you had one bed, 1,500 beds. And his understanding was this, that depression is widely spread in whole Jammu and Kashmir. And this is the case with one child killed by, because mainly the young people die. Mainly the young people take the risk of being a terrorist or throwing stones. And also only the young people dare to face the police bullets. Not only the bullets, for a while they were also using this pellet shots, with blinded more than 15% of those who were demonstrating. And the family has to live with that. The whole situation in Jammu and Kashmir today is a what you might call itself as the whole state has become a patient test. And to expect them for politically remaining sane or to be honest to our country's rulers is absurd. It's just not possible. It's not just possible from that one. Don't forget that when the first attack on Kashmir came in 1948, I think it was 47, 48. The Kashmiris, irrespective of religion or divisions and internal divisions, so on and so forth, all of them helped the Indian army to carry even their military hardware and so on and so forth without refused to take a single rupee as a reward. They did it as a gesture of their duty. And today we have traveled a long way. All works on Kashmir now can only be done within the parameters of psychiatric vision. So that also is something I would like to draw your attention to. In fact, I would go even further. I see all around me, even in the sphere of politics today, a kind of a touch of, if I may put it so, a touch of what I can only say, I don't want to use a technical term, but some kind of a touch of psychopathy. Because it is a part of political practice now. To have that touch. This is something in your role, built into it. If you do not conform to that rule, or convention, what has become normal practice, then you are taken in as, oh, kind of a romantic guardian. And there are, so on and so forth. The real politics is there, where you are handling people in a way which is almost like a chessboard, where you are playing chess with human life, with human, so on and so forth. So there is this touch of, I would say, not only psychopathy, but even sadism to some extent. Sadism to some extent in this politics. And it is in this context that I would invite this distinguished gathering to at least occasionally meet with some of these issues and make your voice heard, because your voice will count. I could give even the example of, I was in fact thinking of mobilizing an appeal by a number of psychiatrists from India to write a technical note on the way the social welfare services in European societies and in Australian societies have handled some parents, mothers particularly, as not worthy mothers, and snatch the child. Often they snatched and ran the child. I have interviewed her, one of them, Sagorika, who is a perfectly normal person, very happy now that a Calcutta High Court judge gave him the right to have our children, and she works very hard. She has 2 children. She takes care of the children, and she is happy. The children are happy, and I know her well. That they are similar. So that, but there are. She's not the only one. There are others. Mostly these people come from the third world, or people who are also belonging to the working class in England or in Germany. It always is something who from some of the immigrant families with whose children they pick up like this. I mean, in Australia, one mother committed suicide by jumping into a river because her daughter was was snatched away from her and put in a social welfare measure. So there you are. I have spoken enough. I have not given you any wise advice, but I am just drawing your attention to the world in which we live, and I hope that some of these persons will probably will be benefited if I could mobilize some of you to take a more spirited and direct way. And thank you very much.
Thank you, Ashis. Thank you very much. I think it's what a wonderful overview, from I mean that could only come from you, Ashis. So I mean I can't even afford to comment on what you have said. It's so profound. But your painting of the present political scenario, from sadism to psychopathy, I think that's something. Anyway, so now Nimesh, please go ahead. The lead speaker.
Thank you, sir. Only 10 or 12 at least. So I won't speak. We can say 0. Right. Good evening. Ashis, the Tripathi Sahab, who has been chairman of the organization that I worked with for a very long time, but he's a dear friend too. And And of course, Suhas, my friend Lavlin, Rita, and Vishal. Firstly, a correction, so that all of you also know, we haven't really had a round of introductions. Ashita, most of us here, except for Vishal, Dr. Neena, and one young person there are no psychiatrists here. There are only 4 of us, in fact. The whole idea is to reach out to all of you other groups of professionals. But I must say, a few clarifications, if I might. I agree with Suhas Borker completely. In terms of depth and the profoundness of knowledge and the larger view, it's very difficult to even reflect on or respond to what Professor Ashis Nandy has said. But from the viewpoint of the science that I come from, first important fact, while the issue of mass killers and genocides is related to possibly personality profile, psychopathy, and whatever else, in routine human existence, is very good research, if not incontrovertible evidence to suggest. Sure, thanks. If not incontrovertible evidence to suggest that violence by persons with mental illness to the rest of the society is much, much, much less than violence by the society toward the persons with mental illness. This is established. So please, let's not get carried away by the scholarly research on genocides about how that's related to, from Adolf Hitler to whoever we might name. The aspect about numbness and psychopathy, I think, is human history. But let me come to, you must also realize this lineup that Suhas Borker and we have worked out with Ashis Das and Tripathi Saab's advice on behalf of IIC is a bit of a buffet table, right? Vishal, my young colleague from psychiatry and the president of the Delhi Psychiatric Society, will surely try and talk about clinical psychiatry and how the interface between society and what clinical psychiatrists do happens and what are the difficulties there. I happen to be a trained and very interested public health professional in addition to being a psychiatrist. And one of my senior mentors with Dr. L.M. Nath, Dr. C.S. Pandav, he's here for my public health interests and orientation. So I'm going to talk about the larger public health perspective, the mega picture and the issue of mental health of the millions rather than one-on-one individual cases. And the first point there is this. The whole issue of persons with mental illness that Suhas Borker referred to. Currently, the term is person with mental illness. This happened, some of you will recall, from the HIV epidemic. That's the time when this whole idea of saying not HIV positive person, persons living with HIV/AIDS, PLHA. So PMI is okay, but through the day I've been thinking today, are there any non-PMIs? Does anyone here claim to be a non-PMI? I don't. The classic textbook from England, Maya Gross, if you will remember Ninaji, patron of Delhi Psychiatric Society here, said, and when we were studying 40 years ago, lifetime expectancy of a diagnosable psychiatric disorder is 96%. The possibility that at one point of time, any one of us might suffer from a diagnosable psychiatric disorder. Now that brings me to the next major concern. In last 50 or 60 years, the one big nation that I'm not going to name, but I'm going to keep referring to, in a unipolar world post-1990s, one big nation that seems to control and want to continue to control the world, has also contributed a lot to psychiatry and public mental health. And I'm sure you get the hint or the reference. If you don't, please ask your neighbor. That country has actually, what I believe, is a classic case of over-psychiatricizing the human existence. Every small day-to-day experience of an individual, of a couple, or a family is given a psychiatric label, in all probability, medicines. And don't forget, there is a psychiatry establishment responsible for that, but there is also the pharma drug companies and the human tendency to find quick fix solutions. So if a couple has a problem or if a person has a bad morning, he or she wants a quick pill so that by the time I reach work, I should be all right. So that's the problem over psychiatricization of the society. And let me give you figures for that. What are the global figures for diagnosable psychiatric disorders? Any idea? Anyone? Other than my psychiatric colleagues? 25%. WHO said in 2001, 1 in 4 persons will have a diagnosable psychiatric disorder in global figures. Now, I have a slide. Suhas suggested we don't use slides, but I have a slide that always works wonders. And that says, WHO says 1 in 4 people will have a diagnosable psychiatric illness. Look at 3 people around you, and if they seem normal, the point, my friends, about that superpower is that they have figures of 50%. Credible NIH studies, National Institutes of Health, 49%. Now, my question to official delegations from that country has also been, if out of 4 people, 2 are diagnosable, who diagnoses whom? Really a serious problem. But good news. The good news is that the Indian figures are only 10 to 12%. So 50% out there, 25% globally. In India, only 10 to 12%. So out of every 10 people, you will have to look at 9 other people before. You don't look at only 3 people, look at 9 other people. The next important data set, and this is where we need to work on from public health viewpoint. What the field of public health calls as service gap or treatment gap. So hypothetically, in this country, if out of 100 people, 10 to 12 people may have diagnosable, worthy of treatment, mental disorder. How many people reach any mental health service? 2. 80% treatment gap. The world over, treatment gap for mental disorders is between 30 to 80%, 90%. So we are not alone. There are many societies who have this, but 80% treatment gap. So the public health approaches are required there. The world is also changing, I think, for good, and there are a lot of colleagues here, retired academicians who have become mental health activists, and my own clients, users of mental health services, their family-based carers, and that movement has become stronger. So I think, like every other field, the field of mental health has also become multi-stakeholder. Unlike the socio-political unipolar world post-1990s, fortunately, I think, including child rights, most other fields, we psychiatrists, our predecessors, controlled and decided what will happen in mental health when I was studying. No longer so. There will be at least 7 or 8 groups of stakeholders around the table. If Tripathi sahab were to call for a meeting, policy meeting, there will have to be everybody's viewpoint. Psychiatrists, psychologists, users themselves, recovered patients, family members, human rights lawyers. So multi-stakeholder reality is one fact. The second fact is that it's no longer patriarchal, unidirectional. वो ज़माने ख़त्म हो गए मेडिसिन में भी और साइकियाट्री में भी. डॉक्टर कौन है? मैं या तुम? मैंने कहा दवाई ले लो. That's over. There will have to be, in the clinic, to especially public health programs, a participatory approach. Those 7 or 8 groups will sit around a table and decide what's good for the community. So those are the good changes. The theme for 2023, and I don't think it's here, but Suhas and we discussed that. Every year, the World Health Organization headquarters and the international global body called World Federation for Mental Health, WFMH, they decide a theme for 10th October, which is going to be tomorrow this year. And this year, the theme is mental health as a universal human right. Now, I have to tell you a story there also. I finished my MBBS in 78, and 78 is when the bigwigs of WHO met in a place called Alma-Ata in then USSR. 30 years of WHO since 1948. And any MBBS or MD psychiatry or any other PSM student, sir, Panda Sahab, 78 Alma Ata Declaration said health for all by the year 2000. Okay, I know some of you remember. And no PG or UG student could escape that short note or essay. Okay, critical appraisal of health for all by the year 2000. Now, I haven't discussed it with Panda Sahab, but Ramli Swami, to other senior colleagues who were actually at Alma Ata, by the time I came to AIMS in 88, I started asking and say, those wise men and women, in Alma Ata, what did they think? In 22 years, you will achieve health for all. Mind you, not health care. By year 2000, every living human being will be healthy. And then I was told, the story goes, that apparently the idea was to set the goal of saying health care for all. Computers थे, electronic typewriters नए आए थे, तो कहीं वो care word miss हो गया, तो slogan बन गया health for all by the year 2000. I'm recalling that because the slogan this year is a bit bombastic, too aspirational. Repeat, mental health for everyone is a universal human right. Please pause and think. We are not talking about mental health care for those who are mentally ill. We are talking about positive mental state of health for all the living beings, which becomes socio-political, economic, cultural, everything. How do you achieve that? So, my next point, and possibly one of the last few. I'm not looking at Suhas, but I'll finish soon, sir. See, the whole issue of mental health, if you want to look at it in larger terms, will have to be seen as National Mental Health Program now realizes. Some of you remember the Finance Minister 2 years ago announced a huge budgetary provision for what she called mental health services, right? And most states are implementing through demands for whatever its pluses and minuses. But I think they have recognized one very good thing. And I think that's been a culmination of last 10 or 20 years of work. And a body like this needs to recognize and reflect and work on it. And I'm going to take a few liberties here. The field of diagnosis and treatment or even rehab of persons with mental illness is a scientific, technical job. Leave it to the professionals. Help if you can, like you do, but leave it to the professionals. It's a science. Come to mental distress, like we experience in the epidemic. There is no human being out of 8 billion who can say he or she was never distressed, right? So epidemic has established the whole relevance of psychological distress symptoms not amounting to disorder. That is where there is a role of almost everybody around. You want to help each other, support, see if somebody needs treatment, take in there. And the third level, mental wellness. Everyone, every living being being in a positive state of mental health. So please recognize the 3 levels of action required, and I hope Pandava Sahab will agree: mental illness and its treatment rehab, mental distress and its prevention, and promotion of mental wellness. So the level of science to society involvement will progressively change as you go from mental illness to mental distress to mental wellness. And that, if we recognize a whole lot of energy that seems to have now come about around mental health, everybody is interested in mental health, would be properly channelized. Not to interfere too much into the core science of psychiatry and mental health and what happens in the hospital, except for social audit, supervise, keep an eye, but look after the mental wellness and the mental distress of the society. Lastly, I think, I'm sure we'll get some chance in the discussion and questions. Beware. Beware of 2 things. One, this whole concept of counseling that has caught on. Everybody is counseling everybody else. Everybody is a counselor. To the extent that I have another slide that I love using. I don't have a washing machine at home, truly. If I go to a washing machine shop, that gentleman or the lady there will guide me and help me make a decision about what machine to buy. Front loading or top loading, automatic or semi-automatic, what size. Can he or she be called a washing machine counselor? Wait till the manufacturers catch on. So the point, friends, is we seem to have expansion at the cost of dilution. Let's not do that. The second, without again naming, one of the most reputed print magazines and TV channels of this country, with all respect, 2 years ago came up with a title story. Excuse me. India is the most depressed country in the world. I am sorry, BS. We are not. We are not the most depressed country. The error that the magazine made is what I learned. Don't talk about absolute numbers, talk about ratios. Now we already become the largest population. That time we were the second largest. So data will say largest number. That doesn't mean we are the most depressed country. Happens with diabetes, happens with everything. Please, India has a lot of resilience, a lot of positive aspects for mental health. We need to capitalize on that while following psychiatry for those with mental disorders. Thank you.
Nimesh didn't, of course, mention the political variety of the washing machine. Now, can I ask? Tripathi ji, come.
Respected Ashis da, Dr. Nimesh, Suhas ji, Lavlin, Vishal, and Rita ji, yes, Rita ji. Well, Dr. Ashis da has already given you a certain dimension, a political dimension of what is the mental health which is ailing our country as a system. And Dr. Desai has, of course, he's a very well-known expert on the subject, and he has, I think, very rightly said that there are degrees of everything. What is mental illness is something which has to be very clearly defined. Because if you do not define mental illness properly, then we will get into that error that India is the most depressed country in the world. Pandemic has shown one thing very clearly, that we are a very resilient society. And that is primarily because we have community participation and a family system. Well, in Italy, when the pandemic started, we had pictures of, people dying outside hospitals, because their illness means you have to be hospitalized, because there is no other method of treating a person. As the country advances beyond a point, the only treatment possible is hospitalization. Fortunately, we are not in that state. And even today, illnesses are treated largely at home. And even medical science is now saying that the treatment which can be given at home cannot be substituted by the treatment in a hospital, unless and until the matter is very, very critical and you require, certain machines and facilities and expertise. Then, of course, hospitals are required and hospitals are a must, and you go there. But for everything, we do not have to go to a very, expert institution. If you go to AIIMS today, it is a wonderful institution. But the problem is that everybody goes to AIIMS. Well, even if you are OPD, the AIIMS OPD is so difficult to get, and that has almost made it inaccessible. Even I will shudder twice, think 100 times before I go to AIIMS for treatment. Unless and until I am very badly ill, I will avoid going to AIIMS. Of course, if I am too unwell, then I will go to AIIMS at whatever it is the cost. So community has to be responsible, community has to be involved. Unless until there is community involvement, we will not be able to tackle the problem of mental health care. The new act, the act which came in 2017 and the rules 2018, as part of being a bureaucrat, I have to defend certain decisions and actions which the government has taken. And therefore, I would say that this is a big progress, because for the first time, mental illness has been scientifically defined. It has not been left to the prejudices that your views is this or that. it is defined as per international standards, which are acceptable standards. And even, in its implementation, the right of deciding the care has been left to the experts. Of course, the individual's rights have also been protected. Also, for the first time, that the rights of the person with mental illness have also been very clearly laid down. For example, informed consent. You cannot treat a person without his consent. And his consent has to be informed. And if he is not able to take that decision, then there is a provision that his representative will be in a position to take that position. And his rights are very, very broad. The person treating him will have to give him all the information about the method of treatment, also about the side effects, the repercussions of the treatment, and he has a right to see whatever reports are there which are leading to his line of treatment. So I think this is a very, very major step, that the individual has been given the right, and he has also been given the right to appeal against. And the court's rights have been slightly restricted. The courts have the right to accept a patient or order that he should be admitted. But the line of treatment, even the courts are not allowed to interfere. So there has been a big balance between the rights of the people who are not well and the expert. As Dr. Desai said, that unless until you leave the treatment to the experts, if all of us start deciding what should be the line of treatment, then we are in for very, very big trouble. Then the rights and the responsibilities and duties of the state, the central government, and even up to the district level have also been very, very well defined in the new Act and rules. It's a separate matter that the states have to also adopt rules. And in Delhi, for example, I read only a few days ago that Delhi, the rules have been accepted only last month. So the Delhi State Authority will start actually functioning only now. Otherwise, it was dysfunction. But that doesn't mean that initiatives are not taken. As Dr. Desai institution, he was the director of ABHAS. Already a number of very good initiatives have been taken place. One is a program in school health. Because unless until awareness is created, because today it's very common for children to say that, no, I am depressed, I am not well. If there is examination, they will say we are suffering from depression. Now, therefore, there is a need to make children aware about what is mental illness, what are the options available, and to ensure that they do not go into these wrong channels of depression and other things. Then there is a program of mobile units. In 11 districts, there are 11 mobile units which are going from place to place, and they are able to reach the service at home. Instead of the person coming to the hospital, the mobile unit reaches to the people, and 11 is not enough. In my opinion, it has to be multiplied several times. But at least they are on the right direction, that 11 units are reaching out. And I think the most important scheme which has been started is Telemanas, where it is a Government of India initiative, where the person is able to get consultation over telephone. He can ring up, and there will be somebody who will be able to listen to him, because getting to a doctor is not easy in our country. We think 100 times, we telephone 100 people to get a treatment, to get an appointment. So telemedicine is the ultimate answer, and now this is a scheme which I think will be rolled out much more. And ABHAS has been made in charge of 6 states and union territories, including Jammu Kashmir, UP, Delhi. So these specialized institutions will be looking into the type of advice which will be administered to the patients. And this is something which is not only happening in mental health care. I know that there are private initiatives where companies are also making this facility available, and they are charging a small premium, and then you can, if you are not well, you telephone, and there will be some doctor. He may be sitting in a remote area. He may not be in Delhi. He may be sitting in a village. But a qualified doctor is available to look into your problem and give you advice. So I think this initiative of Telemanas is one of the most important initiatives, and this will also go a long way in looking into this problem. Now, there are many issues. I think time limitation is there. So I think rest of we will try to address in question and answer session. Yeah.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you very much for inviting me today. Well, Mr. Nandy had talked about the killing of one person and how he was getting sleepless nights after what he did. I'm reminded of very famous poet Fyodor Dostoevsky, a Russian writer of 19th century. He wrote a book, many of you must have read it, Crime and Punishment. So actually punishment is inflicted by us on us. Nobody can do anything about your conscience unless you want to address it. When you kill somebody and you are celebrating and having a great dinner and rejoicing, ultimately your soul questions you. Why have you done this? And then you have nightmares, you have sleepless nights, you go to psychiatrists, you do whatever you can. But I think very important to guard your own mind. Are you going right or wrong? I'm basically a filmmaker, and I've made a film for Dr. Desai on mental health, and Vishal was there. All of them became actors. We were rehearsing on Zoom, and finally they got, Vishal, I think you got the best, yes, we got the Oscar. We got the best film award for that. And it was fantastic, you know. I would tell Vishal, we were on Zoom, please, little more, you know, you are the depressed soul, so it must come out. And he was clinically depressed because his girlfriend had ditched him, a very common phenomenon. So I also write poems, and I'll read out one poem, and I would like you, the audience, respected audience, to give it a title. Deal? Yeah? Okay. I write sometimes in Hindustani and sometimes in English or Russian. So, this is a phenomenon which we read about every day in newspapers, that we are very traumatized by as a society. Few lines here. बलात्कार जिस्मानी हो या रूहानी, जब एक औरत की आत्मा बिलखती है तो चोट पूरे अस्तित्व को पहुंचती है। पूरी सृष्टि इस कदर से सकती है कि दूर दूर तक तारों की टूटन, धरती की थर थर कंपन, आसमान की भयंकर जकड़न, फूलों की डूबती धड़कन एक मासूम की नींद तोड़ देती है। ये मासूम कौन है? कोई भी बच्चा जो माँ की गोद में है, बिकॉज चिल्ड्रन आर वेरी वेरी परसेप्टिव. यू डोंट हैव टू टेल अ बेबी एनीथिंग. They are so well connected to the universe that they can feel everything. Then we condition our mind with layers and layers of what is right, what is wrong, what we should do. But actually best is to be natural and intuitive. So this child उठ जाता है नींद से, उसकी नींद टूट जाती है. चिल्ला उठता है बच्चा घबरा कर, माँ उसे गोद में सहलाकर, थपथपाकर, लोरी सुनाकर चुप कराने की कोशिश में बंद कमरे से बाहर ले आती है। ये माँ कोई भी हो सकती है, आप में से कोई भी। जब सर उठाकर देखती है तो सहम जाती है। चांद के चीथड़े लाल रंग में डूबे नज़र आते हैं। वो समझ जाती है कि कहीं एक स्त्री का विनाश हुआ है, उसके भरोसे का, प्रेम का, मासूमियत का। इसलिए बच्चे की चीखें हवा को छलनी कर रही हैं, क्योंकि कहीं किसी औरत का स्वाभिमान लुट गया। अब शरीर और आत्मा से अपाहिज उस औरत का बिलखता हुआ बच्चा भी थक कर अपना सर रखे तो किसकी गोद में? जिस गोद का अपमान हुआ हो, उसमें शिशु चैन की नींद सोए तो कैसे सोए? किसको माँ कहे? उसे जो दूध पिलाती थी, या जिसके सीने को नोचा गया है? उसे जो इंसानियत को पाल रही थी, या फिर उसे जो तबाह होकर अंधेरों को गले लगा रही है? कितनी बार कोई औरत बलात्कार सहेगी, रूहानी या जिस्मानी? ये धरती हरियाली से महरूम कितनी बार रेगिस्तान बनेगी? एक नग्न औरत कितनी बार अपनी देह ढकेगी, या फिर शर्मिंदगी से शर्मिंदा खुदकुशी कर लेगी? शरीर त्याग भी दे तो आत्मा का क्या करेगी? अब आप बताइए, इसका शीर्षक क्या होना चाहिए? औरत की आत्मा। ब्यूटीफुल। जैसे कि मैंने कहा, बलात्कार शरीर का हो या आत्मा का हो, हिंसा तो हिंसा है। सो आई थिंक हिंसा के प्रति जो एज ए मीडिया पर्सन मैं समझती हूँ, एंड सुहासी वुड प्रॉब्ली एग्री विद मी, is to sensitize right from the beginning, your children, people around you. Prevention is the best cure. It is actually the best cure. We leave our babies to ayahs. We are, so ambitious that we want to achieve this, that, and the other. What good is that status in life? What good is that achievement if your own child is being abused in your own home and you're not aware of it? Why are you not aware? So awareness, I think, is the key to preventing a lot of crime, lot of damage, lot of violence in our society. I have made, I think, about 4 films on this issue, on mental health, and I would like to play 2-3 clips and then explain why I made this. I am not playing Pukar Zindagi Ki because you're so well aware of it. तो पहला लगाइए, पुकार जिंदगी की. We should have a separate show. Yeah, separate show. And Suhasi, they all acted like mature actors. My son and I co-directed it. They were fantastic.
जंगल के मोर को कभी बागों और चमन की जरूरत नहीं होती. जहाँ कहीं अपने परों को खोल देगा, एक चमनिस्तान खिलेगा. कैद खाने की 4 दीवारियों के अंदर भी सूरज चमकता है, और चांदनी रातों ने कभी कैदियों और गैर कैदियों में इम्तियाज नहीं किया. जिस कैद खाने में सुबह रोज मुस्कुराती हो, शफक हर रोज निखरे, परिंदे हर सुबह शाम चहकें, ऐसे में कैद खाने में होने पर भी अपने आप को ऐशो मतानियत के सामानों से खाली क्यों समझ लिया जाए. अगर दुनिया की सारी मसनूई खुशनुमाइयाँ ओझल हो गईं तो हो जाएं. सुबह अब भी हर रोज मुस्कुराएगी, चांदनी अब भी जलवा फरोशियां करेगी. हम अपने से बाहर सारी चीजें ढूंढते रहेंगे, मगर अपने खोए हुए दिल को कभी नहीं ढूंढेंगे. मैं आपको बतलाऊं, इस राह में मेरी कामरानियों का राज क्या है. लोग हमेशा खोज में लगे रहते हैं कि जिंदगी को बड़े बड़े कामों के लिए काम में लाएं, लेकिन ये नहीं जानते कि यहाँ एक सबसे बड़ा काम खुद जिंदगी है. यहाँ इससे ज्यादा आसान काम कोई ना हुआ कि मर जाइए, और इससे ज्यादा मुश्किल काम कोई ना हुआ कि जिंदा रहिए.
मैं दिल को मरने नहीं देता, कोई हालत हो, इसकी कोई तड़प कभी धीमी नहीं पड़ेगी। मैं जानता हूं कि यहां जिंदगी की सारी रौनकें इसी मैकदाए खलबत के दम से हैं। ये उजड़ा और सारी दुनिया उजड़ गई। वाह मौलाना, आप लिखते जाइए।
This is when Maulana Azad was in jail, Ahmednagar jail, during freedom struggle, and Nehruji was with him. So what is Maulana talking about? They are in a horrible jail with horrible conditions. But he is saying, इससे आसान काम कोई नहीं है कि आप जिंदगी को जी लें, मरना तो सबके लिए बड़ा आसान है. So the message is that despite all difficulties, if we as people, as individuals decide that come what may, we will remain happy, it's not that difficult to overcome problems. Of course, we have to fight it out. But then if they could fight for the freedom of our country, this is a small battle to fight. Ab next clip dikha dijiye, please.
A night at a time. I go to school, come back from school. I was very traumatized. Like in school, I didn't want to be there because...
Please be fast, okay? This is a very interesting clip and I want to share with all of you. I was shooting in Haryana village. I come back home at 12 midnight and I see two young women waiting for me. One of them was a camera person and the other one was going to interview me for Singapore Times. And when she asked me, what are you working on? So I told her right now I was shooting a film on the issue of rape. So she said, oh Lavlin, I would like to talk about it. I said, talk about what? She said, I'm a rape victim. And I lived in India earlier in Punjab. I was raped every day by my servant. I was 9-year-old, only 9. And I had 2 younger sisters. And my servant would say, if you utter a word, then I'm going to rape your sisters. So she said, I kept mum. I couldn't say a word. So at 1:30 in the night, we got the cameraman and we shot her. And she was quite willing to address the audience. I told her, no, it may hurt your family. So let's just have your profile and, you talk about it. So her voice we have used in 2 small clips. One of a little girl who goes to school and is traumatized by living this experience every day. And this other girl, what she does to herself after this. Please.
A night at a time. I go to school, come back from school. I was very traumatized. Like in school, I didn't want to be there because I couldn't relate to the other children. I felt like I was growing up, I had much larger issues than sort of the newest toy that they got or something like this. I could not relate at all. They thought I was really weird because, they didn't understand what was wrong with this girl who's so quiet, who's so shy, who's so frightened of things. A night at a time. I go to school, come back from school. I was very traumatized. Like nobody understood me, and nobody understood me because I wasn't talking. The people closest to me in my life did not know who I was. You're like in a tunnel, and there's no light, and you feel like you can't breathe. Like I felt like my head was going to split open. And you literally feel at that point like, I am really better off not being here, because if I commit suicide, I'll be gone from this earth. It will hurt my family, but at least they don't have to know the truth. And I reached a very dark stage in my life. I plucked off all my eyebrows, all my eyelashes, and I looked like some kind of freak. It happens when I'm unconsciously stressed. And I think that is really also just this thing that you believe you're ugly because you don't see yourself as being beautiful. You believe that, whatever filthy things have been done to you are part of you. They have seeped into yourself, into your being, into your bloodstream. They've really infiltrated into you. And when you start to believe this, you start to manifest it and you start to reaffirm this belief of ugliness. nobody
Bas rok dijiye. Thank you. So, I also interviewed a lot of rape convicts at Tihar jail. And you'll be shocked to know that barring one or two, there were absolutely no regrets. None at all. One of them, a young man, said, "Oh," and he's quite happy about it. "I raped this woman for 3 months. And I told my parents she's my wife till police came, found her and rescued her." But one was little sensible and he said, "Madam, crime one-way street hai. इसमें आप घुस तो सकते हो, निकल नहीं सकते हो." So therefore, awareness of mind, and as a society collectively, we have to talk to our children, to our neighbors, to our friends, to everyone without feeling shy. I mean, we don't feel shy or embarrassed when we read newspapers and see it in films or in news. Then why do we feel shy addressing this problem with friends and relatives and everybody around us? When my son was 3 years old, I had kept one male servant to play with him. And I told him, "Look, beta, if somebody touches you here or here or here, you'll come and tell your mummy at once." On the 3rd day, Vedant comes to me and says, "You know, he touched me here." So I knew that we were going to go into some kind of trouble. So I told that guy to leave. But you have to talk openly to your children. You have to be a friend. You can't be, "I'm the mother and I know everything." No, nobody knows everything. So just talk, evolve, and solve the problems together. So that is it, yeah. And I looked at the clock. Yeah. I've taken 9.5 minutes. Thank you.
Thank you very much. It's a privilege to be here, and especially to be a panelist in the midst of all the psychiatrists and well-known psychiatrists and clinical psychologists and filmmaker and bureaucrat from the Ministry of Health. So it's a real privilege for me. I come from the child rights sector. I'm a practitioner. Once upon a time was an academician, but right now for many years I'm a practitioner. So I'm going to speak about mental health of adolescents. Now, as Dr. Nimesh Desai had said, that mental health as defined by World Health Organization is no longer stated as just an absence of mental illness, but it also emphasizes on mental and emotional well-being. The pandemic has shown the importance of mental health in the lives of people. The unprecedented situation due to COVID-19 actually impacted the lives of children and adolescents in several ways as to how they learn, how they play, behave, interact, and deal with situations. So what are the issues the adolescents are facing? As all of us know, that adolescents that want to discover themselves. When one is questioning, rebelling, wanting to be accepted in one's peer group, they are anxious of their studies, examination, and relationships, romantic and platonic, body image, or questioning their own sexual identity, or understanding one's sexuality, or feeling attracted towards the opposite or same gender with the rapid physiological changes in the body. There's also, at this particular point in time, there's isolation and disconnections because of the high dependency on internet. We don't speak, we don't have physical relationship anymore. We are dependent on the virtual connections. There's a lack of communications with parents, bonding on a lack of space. The virtual friends have become their source of first-hand information and support system to fall back to when in crisis or in need of advice. Somehow it has gained acceptance over parents, older siblings, teachers, caseworkers, or counselors until the issue takes a serious turn. The kids don't come to us anymore because they have their virtual friends and their virtual advisors and friends who tell them to we are outdated, ancient. We don't understand them. That's exactly the words they say. You don't understand us. You don't know us. And that's what we are dealing with. But there are also concerns of societal norms for expected gender roles to express one's emotionally, to communicate in terms of clothing, behavior, whose complex interplay has a severe impact on children and adolescents' mental health. We socialize children on existing cultural and social norms, which straitjackets a girl and a boy to the prevailing gender-based social norms. Non-binary gender forms are not accepted, but there are children who believe in gender fluidity. For example, a girl is comfortable dressing in male clothes, having crew-cut hair style, prefers bonding with boys, and a boy may prefer wearing colors and clothes that are defined as feminine, paint their nails, are not aggressive, do not engage in rough games, talk softly, comes across to other boys as not being masculine enough. These children are targeted, bullied, and tormented by other children. They are chastised by their parents and community members for not conforming to socially accepted binary gender norms and traits. I'd like to take you all back to 2022. I hope you might recall a tragedy that happened in 2022, the horrific suicide of a 15-year-old boy, a student of an elite school who could not bear the emotional, physical, and sexual torments of his classmates. He was ridiculed and tormented for his feminine traits. His mother, a single parent, was supportive of her son, but the school management and teachers did not take any proactive step to safeguard the child, although they were aware of it. For the child to take this ultimate decision to end his life must make us all realize we too are guilty for the death of that child. He was a brilliant, gentle soul. The second thing that is impacting the lives of children is technology. Today, internet has a major influence on adolescents' life. While it can facilitate socialization, communication, and knowledge access, it also presents a risk such as cyberbullying, sexting, depression for adolescents. The ramification of children using internet for long periods unsupervised has resulted in an increased number of children being trapped in dark websites and chat rooms, resulting in online sexual abuse. A study done by Key and others in 2020 mentions that raised agitation, aggression, anxiety, depression, sadness, and worsened school performance are some of the emotional issues reported among children worldwide. Social media platforms are used to express their unhappiness, distress. There are evidences of adolescents bullied and shamed, which has resulted sadly in them taking their lives. Unregulated flow of content, particularly on the sensitive topics of sex, sexuality, gender, develops a lot of misconceptions among children and adolescents. We all know that in our schools, we're not taught about sex and sexuality. It's a taboo. Physiology is just skipped. The teachers are very hesitant, they're shy, they're embarrassed. So where will the children go to learn about sex, sexuality? They go to the pornographic sites and they learn from there and then start experimenting. So there is also so much of a pressure to be famous virtually, gain validation by their peers, because most of them want to have Instagram followers, and that becomes a big thing for them. One of the most significant learning, and no, I have to say that the National Commission of Protection of Child Rights survey in 21, with 3,400 children, found that 42.9% had social networking accounts. More alarmingly, children as young as 10 years had social media accounts. The reports say that 37% of 10-year-old children had a Facebook account and 24% had Instagram. One of the most significant learning from our cases, Butterflies works with them, have been that children and adolescents are slowly losing interest in the physical world and social relationships. They're getting into risk behavior due to overload of information they gather from social media, especially Instagram and YouTube. Some contents are very toxic. I'm sure most of you know of the YouTubers. And the whole focus of the content is I, me, and myself. The risk behavior has multiplied, and it has reached an alarming level because they don't know what is acceptable and unacceptable behavior. So what should we be doing? What are some of the strategies to support adolescents? Therefore, providing support to adolescents population requires to be holistic. The approach should be a continuum of care from family, community to school. It's not only individualistic, it has to be a continuum of care. Family. Parenting today, their knowledge and skills need to evolve, keeping to the present day challenges of bringing up children. One challenge is the lack of communications. Everyone is hooked onto the mobile. You might find the whole family sitting together, but everybody is on their mobile. There is no talk. There's nobody talking to each other. There is limited socializing. Having conversations with children to know their friends, what are their current interests, what kind of social media, what are the social media they're using, they don't know. They don't even observe when their child is silent, has anger tantrums, or is irritable. And children have mentioned to us in our therapy sessions, and to quote one child, "My parents do not know what is going on in my mind. They're busy and have no time to sit with me and have conversations. My parents do not know me." The lack of communication among parents also impacts the emotional well-being of children. Therefore, family therapeutic care is crucial when it could be a parent or an older sibling that is the cause of stress for the adolescents. It is found critical that one has to work with the family. The school is the other significant agency. Life skill education in school should focus on awareness sessions on mental health, on topics as safe and unsafe use of technology, how to handle pressures of examination, non-conforming binary gender, romantic relationships, problematic and harmful sexual behavior, cyberbullying, online games. One can go on these things. But most importantly, to have sessions on coping mechanisms to be able to cope with disappointments, failures, frustrations, anxiety, stress, and anger management. To reach out and seek help from the teacher, counselors, parent, or an adult the child trusts. These skills can help to combat the public stigma and prevent from internalizing stigma attached to the concept of mental health. Apart from counselors in schools, safe spaces must be created in schools for children to share their concerns and seek support. This is so very important. You need safe spaces to talk, where you will be respected for what you are saying, and seek support. Schools should not concentrate on academic excellence alone, but it must create an environment of care and protection. Every school should have play, art, music, theater as curriculum from primary to secondary level. This is therapeutic, but today we don't have it. It's only in the primary school. So I would say that, since I know time is running short, I don't want to talk about many things which we are doing, but I would say that strengthening community-based mental health program for adolescents is very important. As much as the family, you have the school, and then you have the community. Primary health centers and tertiary care hospitals, I would say, and I would request the doctors and everyone sitting here, that they should have child and adolescent guidance clinics as a part of public health. In conclusion, one would like to say, India, that has the largest adolescent population in the country, that is 253 million, that is 2011 census, only 41% feels that it is okay to talk about their mental, emotional well-being and ask for help. And this is a UNICEF survey of 2021. Moreover, as stated by the Indian Journal of Psychiatry 2019, majority of children in India were not seeking mental health support even before the pandemic. It is mentioned that at least 50 million children in India were affected with mental health illness, of which 80% have not sought support. what does it indicate? That it is the need of the hour, that every adolescent must know that they can talk about their mental emotional well-being without being targeted, without being stigmatized, with their trusted ones, and seek support to go through it by receiving guidance from mental health professionals. We owe this to our children and adolescents. Thank you.
Vishal, now go ahead. You're the last batsman in.
So good evening, everyone. Thank you, Dr. Dr. Desai and Suhas, for inviting me to this conclave. Not just the last batsman, I'm on 19.4 balls. You know, the 2 ball reh gaye hain bas ab now for the innings, and the innings will end. But anyways, unlike everyone else which I looked at, I did not make any notes. So I came with an empty mind. So let's see how the atmosphere is, how the audience is, what my speakers before me speak, because they've spoken on a big range of topic, and which is interesting, you know? And this is what I wanted to highlight here. It's not easy to understand mental health, or not because look at the experiences of Dr. Ashis Nandy, look at the experience of Dr. Desai. He framed mental health in a different way, he framed it in a different way. Our bureaucrat framed it in a different way. Our child psychologist framed it in a different way. And our leading filmmaker framed it in a different way. This is why mental health is very complex. That's not with other organs of the body. Liver hai to liver hai. Usme jo damage, you see that. The problem, because we cannot see the mind, we don't know, and the brain is very complex. We still don't understand how brain works actually. We're trying very hard to understand. Hopefully AI and quantum computing will help us in future to, you know, decipher what's going to happen in what's happening in our brain. How our brain works when we're together in a group. This is called crowd psychology. And when people go for murderous rage, that's a different phenomena versus how somebody else on an individual platform does it in, you know, so the mind is really, really complex. This is what I wanted to talk to, highlight from this audience itself, from this gathering itself. My understanding of psychiatry, unlike any other branch of medicine, this is a bridge between humanities and sciences. I always look at it as a bridge because I'm not treating just an organ. I'm treating a human being who lives in a family, who lives in a society. So if I do not understand sociology, if I don't understand the anthropology, if I don't understand the culture of that human being, if I don't understand the setting, family setting the person is coming in, I cannot treat that person properly. Okay. Yes, doctors think less of economy, but yes, sir, economy also. Yes, socio-economic condition. In fact, if you look at, I don't think no other branch of medicine does it, but we have, when we intake a patient, we ask, so, you know, we ask whether age, sex, religion, socio-economic status, we ask all that. Whether the person lives in a pakka house, semi-urban, urban, all that we ask. Because all that supposed to affect the mental health of an individual. So always looked at psychiatry as a bridge between. The problem now is the schiz which is happening. Now because of the advances, there are a lot of biological psychiatrists who talks about molecules, neurochemistry, all that. And then there are also a group of psychiatrists who will continue to stick with sociological, psychosocial theories. And I think we are somewhere in middle because nothing exists on its own. Everything interacts with everything else. Like butterfly effect, a butterfly flapping its wings in the Amazon causes rain in China. You know, that thing is, we all are interconnected. So it's important for us to have this dialogue which we are having here, to understand each other, to understand how mental illnesses are, and to, again, what Dr. Desai nicely said, grade into 3 ways. Mental illness, mental distress, what Borker sir and I was also going through, ki mera number aayega nahi aayega, and him for finishing the time, but that's not an illness, that's just a distress, and mental well-being. If this session goes fine and everybody says that was a very nice session, we'll all feel very good about it.
Which hopefully now you are.
For others also. I'm trying to make it for others also. So this is important for us to remember, you know. So, okay, now I lost the thought there. Because anyways, I was emptying. Okay, coming to social media. Let's talk about social media. Ma'am talked about it. And this is being streamed into social media. So hopefully much more people watch. We can watch it again. Social media has played an important role. Coming to the topic, topic was from stigma to positive acceptance. And I want to thank COVID here. I really want to thank COVID. Thank you for this pandemic which came. Because, you know, unless we suffer a crisis, we do not find solutions. So in COVID, when we all got locked in our own houses, we could not come out and socialize. We could not go for our gyms or malls or pubs or cinemas or outings. And we lived with our spouses and our parents, and we realized that in सब में तो बड़ी problem है. And others and ourselves also. अभी भी है. So I think that's where the momentum on mental health came up. And that's where a lot of people start talking about mental health. I came to social media. I did a lot of Instagram lives with my own friends. We talked about mental health, and a lot of people were responding to it. And I could never do social media before that. What was the need for that, for a psychiatrist to do such a thing? But that helped. And I saw a lot of people who became mental health advocates, mostly 11th class, 12th class students, first year college students who became mental health advocates. Also, the problem of a lot of counselors coming up, which Sir rightly pointed out, who become overnight counselors. That's what happens in a free society. You know, always have some pluses and some minuses. It's part of the game, part of the whole process. But the point is, people talk about mental health. I see 15-year-old, 16-year-old coming to my clinic. Oh, parents mana kar rahe hain, wo aa rahe hain. You know, this is the change which happens. I want to show to the doctor. But we also need to be very careful. We should not medicalize everything. We should not medicalize emotional distress as an illness. So how do I, as a psychiatrist, look at somebody who has a mental illness? We were just talking about yesterday also. 3 criteria I look at. Obviously, we have symptoms. Let's say I'm hallucinating. I have a lot of delusions. I'm the greatest man in the world, or I have this power and all that. But if I'm functioning fine, if I'm a good productive member of the society, if I'm good with my family, and if I'm able to discharge my duties properly, then I'm not mentally ill. Then I'm probably mentally distressed, possible, but not illness. This is my understanding of things. So whenever a patient comes to us, say, I have depression, I have low mood, I have anxiety, I have this and that, I look at, is this person dysfunctional at any of these levels? Is the person not able to study or not able to go to job? Then there's a problem. Or if person is violent at home, aggressive at home, suspicious towards the wife or the spouse, or aggressive towards children, probably there is a issue there. Or patient is suspicious of neighbors, or very scared, can't go out to the society because of social anxiety, then again there's a problem. So I look at all these 3 levels and see where the patient fits in to treat that person. Why America has 50% and India has 10%? Because of good family structure. We need to remember family structure is the backbone of any society. And as we more evolve sociologically, economically, we all would like to have our own independence. एक अपना घर होगा, अपना के चक्कर में, what happens is you become very lonely. And only your spouse or your girlfriend only or boyfriend only becomes your source of interaction. And that limits the option. And girlfriend की बात किससे करोगे? So, या अपनी wife की बात करोगे. So, if there are people in the family, you interact more. I think social structure, a good social structure negates the negative mental health issues. And that's why sir said very nicely कि इटली में जैसे बीमार हुए तो हॉस्पिटलाइज गए, हमने तो यहाँ काढ़ा पी के ठीक कर लिया. Because, and we learned, so many people didn't know. Youngsters also drank काढ़ा, they would not कि क्या कर रहे हैं. But because of the threat of that, everybody went to die. We all learned nuskas from our dadi, nani, padosi. We all came together, helped. And that's because of good family structure. So I think family structure is very, very important for us. And it's important if we want to not become United States of America for depression, we need to also stick with our roots, strengthen our cultural system, And also, sir, on a side note, MHCA. We should not, the MHCA is a copy and paste law of West, and I think we need to Indianize it much more, which now Indian Psychiatric Society is trying to do, along with parliamentarians and along in discussion with the government. We need to Indianize it much more. Just giving rights to everyone and having no infrastructure for that right is going to cause a lot of chaos. So thank you very much. Thank you.
No, I think we close. I'm sorry, we will not be able to take any questions because we have overshot the time, you know. So I'll just now quickly in a 30-second quick shot, I'll close the meeting. I just want to quote from a man whom I regard as an icon, and I think most of us may regard. This is Nelson Mandela, you know. And this guy was 27 years in prison. Don't forget that. And yet he used to see light in through those bars and think of a new dawn when his country would be free. And then he said these 3 lines, which I think deals with clinical psychology. It deals with psychiatry. He said, "I never lose. I never lose. I win or I learn." You know. So I think this is a quick take on what we have learned today. Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you. Huh? No, I think I'm sorry. Huh? Yeah. We'll close the session now. Thank you very much. Thank you. You've been a patient audience. Thank you very much. We